Okay. Believe we are streaming. All right, dudes and dudettes, welcome to the comic book filibuster, round 2. I attempted to run this stream a few days ago, and it was relatively successful, but now that I've got the go-ahead to make this a proper filibuster, meaning, you gotta go as long as you possibly can, I'm going to try doing a sort of performance endurance piece here. But I guess I'll talk to you all about why I'm doing this. Big comic book guy. My friends tell me I have an encyclopedic knowledge of comic books. I wouldn't say that's the case. I know a lot more people that know a lot more than me. I'm something of an amateur, but I'll often find that whenever I'm like having a conversation with my friends and a particular character comes up in conversation, a random tidbit or interesting fact will come up about the character in my head, and I'll feel a very, strong need to sort of explain that and share that information. That's my alarm to start this stream. Okay. Sorry about that. So, over the past year or so, I've gotten a lot better, but I used to be kind of embarrassed about this sort of stuff. I've always been one to try and not stick out, and I feel like, especially nowadays with like Marvel movies and superhero movies in general sort of dominating the box office and popular culture, there's almost a negative connotation in my eyes regarding comic book characters. And I'm not as much of a fan as those films and those TV shows as I am the actual books, but even still, the connotation remains. So I've gotten a lot better about, kind of being genuine and sharing my interests, because I mean, it's a pretty good quote from this video game YouTuber called Scott the Woz. He doesn't look. He's like a thinner version of me with shorter hair, and he basically just goes, I mean, look at me. Does it look like I'm not into this? And I think I followed the comic book guy archetype fairly well. Glasses, long hair, ponytail sometimes. I fit in. Needless to say, I think I'll go ahead and do a proper start here. And I'm actually a little bit better than last time, because last time I couldn't figure out how to keep my chat up in the same window without showing my actual stream. We figured it out, so not to worry. So if anyone chats this time, someone did last time, and I didn't notice until after the fact, I'll be able to read it. But I don't think that's going to happen. That's all right. That's not why I'm doing this. First question. Who would win a fight? Superman or the Incredible Hulk? The answer should be immediately obvious to you. It's Superman. Power of flight, incredible strength, and the Hulk is pretty dumb. There's sort of a modern understanding of the Hulk that he's able to gain the intelligence of Bruce Banner. In Avengers Endgame, we see like a very common iteration of the character known as Professor Hulk, where it's that idea that Bruce Banner is able to control his alter ego, maintain his strength and his stamina and durability, and essentially invulnerability in his Hulk form, while still being himself and not losing himself to that anger. That version would stand a better chance for sure. But Superman is a sort of character that's known to be the end-all, be-all. There's like a handful of weaknesses. So unless like Hulk could get his hands on some kryptonite, I don't think it's very likely that that would happen. It's really just a matter of Superman picking up the Hulk and throwing him into the sun. And, you know, it can be done in a matter of an instant. So that's pretty cool, I think. But moving on, I've actually prepared some notes. I talked about some of this last stream, and you know, maybe I'll do a quick recap because I found I spent a lot of time explaining context and background, I guess I'll just do it again. So, first and foremost, there's a recent controversy in, one second here. Miles Morales' What If was released recently. Let me make sure I have the right one here. Yeah, here's a tweet. Oh, okay. So basically, the idea is there's a comic book about Miles Morales, who, if you're familiar with Into the Spider-Verse, it's essentially Black Spider-Man from an alternate universe. The What If series basically sees these characters as other characters, or what if this specific thing happened to this character? Excuse me. And you know, Marvel has made an animated series on their Disney Plus streaming service called What If. You know, popular examples include what if Peggy Carter became Captain America? What if a zombie apocalypse hit the Marvel Universe, etc. So this one is pretty simple. What if Miles Morales gained the powers of Thor? A little bit of context on both of these characters. I'm sure you're all familiar, but just in case, Miles Morales was introduced back in the late 2000s as part of a reboot. It's something that comics do constantly. Every couple of years, they will reset their canon. They'll start from the beginning because it draws in new readers. It drives like dedicated fans crazy. It's really unbelievable, but I don't really care because I'm not too involved in the comic scene. But basically, I think it must have been the most recent one. I'm not really sure, but it was called Ultimate Marvel Comics, and it basically saw what if these characters, because their original origins, they took place, you know, X-Men was first published in the early 60s, Spider-Man is something like the late 40s, so, you know, these origin stories are told in a much different context to today. So they sought to retell those stories in the then modern era, so, you know, late 2000s. And Ultimate Spider-Man, pretty standard for the most part. It's actually one of my favorite series of all time. It's one of the first like books I started kind of really getting into when I was young. They tackle a lot of interesting things, like Peter Parker, when he is in high school, he is you know, underage, and there is a government act that is passed that basically sees all unregistered superhumans as government property. So Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D., who is like a mainstay character in the comics, in fact, you know, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury is mostly because of these Ultimate comics, because originally Nick Fury was a white guy, and in the Ultimate universe, and now pretty much in the main continuity as well, he's portrayed to look similarly to Samuel L. Jackson, because that's how he's portrayed in the films. It started in the comics with the Ultimate Universe. Trend stayed in the films, and then films transferred over to the main continuity once they eventually returned after the Ultimate series had ended. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, so do forgive me. But where was I? So, Ultimate Spider-Man. So Spider-Man at some point eventually becomes, whether he likes it or not, S.H.I.E.L.D. property, because Nick Fury is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is like this government division used for end-of-the-world events and cosmic threats, stuff like that. Sometimes headquarters of the Avengers. You should be pretty familiar with them if you've seen any of those Marvel movies. So yeah, that's something about the comics that I really enjoyed. And then later on, I didn't get to this part, but it must have been maybe a couple of years after this when I was reading. They killed off Spider-Man. They killed Peter Parker. I don't know the specifics, but it's something that happens constantly in comics and is constantly undone in comics, because obviously, oh my God, Spider-Man dies in this issue. I gotta see that. I remember when I was young, there was an event with the Fantastic Four that sees Human Torch die, and there's a really famous cover art that's just the Fantastic Four logo, but it's a 3 instead of a 4. And of course, that was undone, maybe months later, not even. The death of Superman in the 70s was a huge comic book event. That brought about a lot of changes, especially in DC's comics, that sort of saw, readers were preferring the darker themes of the Batman stories, and trying to keep up with that same tone with their other characters, which I don't think is the greatest idea, because, I'll give you an example why. One, the death of Superman, it didn't set the precedent, but it's a famous example of killing off comic book characters. Eventually, it was undone, because, of course, there's no way that this company makes millions of dollars off this character from marketing and merchandising or whatever. No way they're going to kill him off. And it's kind of interesting because if you think about it, comic book heroes are sort of like the modern day myth, right? The Odyssey, the Iliad. But the thing about those stories is that, one, they're literarily significant. I'm not trying to compare comic book writing to Homer, but something interesting about superheroes being the modern day myth is that their stories can't really end. They're not allowed to. They can be retold time and time again, from reboots and from alternate universes, but these companies have to keep making their money, so these characters can't ever die. Their stories cannot come to an end. Peter Parker is always bitten by a radioactive spider. Clark Kent always lands from Krypton in Kansas. Batman's parents are always killed as he's, 8 years old or whatever it is. But I'm getting sidetracked again. Back to what we were talking about. Ultimate Spider-Man sees, after the death of Spider-Man, one Miles Morales, follow a similar origin story to Peter Parker. The radioactive spider, that stays the same. Some interpretations of the character sees the spider itself come from another dimension, or the far-off future. But I'm not too familiar with the Ultimate Spider-Man origin. That's how it is in the Spider-Verse film. He's bitten by a spider from Alchemax, which I think is like a Spider-Man 2099 mainstay. Spider-Man 2099 is exactly as it sounds. It's a potential future that sees one Miguel O'Hara, who works for this company, Alchemax, sort of take on the Spider-Man moniker from, almost 100 years in the past, and make a similar costume to fight this like omnipotent police state that controls Nueva York, getting sidetracked again. So the radioactive spider stays the same with Miles Morales. Peter Parker, he's famous. The great line, "With great power comes great responsibility," given to him by his uncle Ben, who is essentially killed because of Peter Parker. He failed to stop a robbery after he was screwed over by the wrestling event, right? That stays true in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, directed by Sam Raimi. And eventually that same burglar goes on to kill Uncle Ben. So if Peter Parker stopped the burglar when he had the opportunity to, his Uncle Ben would still be alive today. So that's something that really defines the character, that long-lasting guilt. He believes that, truly, that quote, "With great power comes great responsibility." He has the ability to save lives, so it is his duty to save lives using his gifts. With Miles Morales, it's his Uncle Aaron who dies, and Uncle Aaron is also known as the Prowler, which is one of the minor villains in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. He's typically just an assassin who has some relatively high-tech gear, but he's known to play the anti-hero, which is like a classic archetype in comic books. Think the Punisher, people who do bad things, but at the end of the day, they're doing them for the right reasons. So that's Miles Morales. He ends up taking the shoes of the dead Peter Parker, and obviously at the time, this was a huge deal. This was a huge deal in comics. Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. Backlash? Let me see if I can actually find this. Yeah, this was from 2011, so this is probably the Backlash of a multiracial Spider-Man. Yeah. So this talks about it a bit. Peter Parker won't be replaced by Miles Morales. They inhabit alternative universes. This is true. Yeah. I don't know. This is kind of boring. Anyway. There was a huge backlash because, think of your typical comic book reader. They're a basement dweller. They live in their parents' house. It's not a great image, but it's mostly true. The guys that truly keep up with comic books are die-hard fans of specific characters, and seeing any major change that isn't inherently with whatever they think is good for the character, because for each one of these guys, there's a specific opinion of what that is. Then the writers are hacks, they're phonies, they're ruining their legacy characters. And some of these guys, they don't like black people too much. So when, at the time, the Spider-Man you know and love is dead, and he's being replaced by a multiracial kid from Brooklyn, people were upset about that. To be honest, if I knew that, obviously it couldn't have been true. If they really were die-hard comic book fans, you would understand that no one is truly dead in comic books. And the Ultimate Universe was already sort of presented as an alternate universe, right? But they didn't really necessarily know that they were going to be returning to the main continuity, which they eventually did. And once that happened, Miles Morales of this Ultimate Universe crossed over into the main continuity, what is known as Earth 616. Marvel, they write their stories based on the understanding that there are going to be different versions of these characters, and almost in a way, in order, if you're familiar with the newest Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, it sees that practice fulfilled of multiverses and crossing over. You know, you get Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland, three different Spider-Men from three different film franchises, all in one film. Marvel writes their stories with that understanding. So the main continuity is referred to as Earth 616. I'm not sure what the alternate universe is. They usually follow that same parameter, Earth, and then like a bunch of digits. I like DC. Theirs is a bit more simple. There's only like, I want to say like a couple dozen different Earths, they're called. They're all Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3. There's not like an unlimited amount. Like in the Marvel universe, there is no set number of different dimensions or, you know, different universes. In DC, there's only a handful, which I think is really interesting. But they don't really, not to my knowledge, they don't really dip into that territory as much as Marvel does with like different universes and universe hopping. But so Miles Morales crosses over into the main continuity, becomes a beloved character, almost a household name thanks to the Into the Spider-Verse film. Mentions of him have already been sort of dropped in the MCU movies back in Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man in that film comes across an Aaron Davis, which is played by Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino in that film. If you remember that scene, he's in a parking lot. Aaron Davis is Prowler's real name. So, and he mentions, I don't know if it's like an end credit thing or, you know, just like a cutaway gag or a deleted scene. He mentions Miles by name, you know, or I've got a nephew in this area. I don't want these guns out there either, blah, blah, blah. So they've already dropped hints that he could appear sometime in the future. We don't know. Yeah. So that's Miles Morales. It's been 20 minutes. On to the second part of the context of this story. So, you know, this is why filibuster. I wasn't kidding. I'm going to keep talking for a while. So Thor, that one's pretty easy. Even if you're not familiar with the Marvel character, it's one of the more recognizable Norse gods in Norse mythology. I'm not too familiar with Norse mythology. In fact, most of what I know does come from the Marvel Universe. And there's this video game called Smite. It's a MOBA, multiplayer online battle arena, that I played back in high school that features like different gods from different mythologies as playable characters. So that's pretty much where my understanding ends. Oh, and I played the new God of War game, which takes place in like the Norse mythos. So I don't really know a whole lot. I haven't done any proper reading or investigation into that. I'm much more familiar with like Greek and Roman stuff from, you know, reading Percy Jackson as a kid. Anyway, so funny story. The main understanding of Thor is that he is literally from Asgard. It's not another universe, but it's another like plane or dimension. Earth is referred to as Midgard to the Asgardians, and Asgard is another plane where Thor is originally from. So basically, through the help of the Rainbow Bridge, this guy called Heimdall, he played by Idris Elba in the movies. Fun fact: I think his character dies in Infinity War. Spoiler alert for 5-6 year old film. But basically, this character, they're cast out. You know, they've done something wrong by Odin, the Allfather, Thor's dad, and land on Earth. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, which grants him his like crazy, insane powers. Like Asgardians, their makeup, they're not human. In fact, some understanding, in fact, the main understanding now is that Asgardians are essentially aliens. And they like interacted with human civilization early on. And those stories about Thor and Loki and all those myths were based on actually meeting with and discussing with these characters, hundreds of thousands of years ago, right? which I find really interesting. So it's more of like a early history book rather than myth. But obviously everyone sees it as myth because it's over the top and ridiculous. But anyway, Thor comes to Earth. Mjolnir, he loses he's not considered worthy of Mjolnir anymore. Mjolnir has an enchantment put there by Odin, I'm pretty sure, that basically says, oh, you've got to be worthy to wield the hammer of Thor, and if you can, then you gain his powers. So basically, anyone can pick it up, but they have to be worthy to do so. So it's not just Thor's hammer. And so, eventually Thor becomes worthy again, whatever that means. It's just a general like nobility thing, or you're pure of heart or whatever. That's why we see Captain America wield it in Avengers Endgame. Just like generally, you're a good guy, basically. And so Thor in the Marvel Universe now is just himself. But in the original introduction of Thor, let me show you something. Eric Masterson was the original Thor. This guy was basically like, he's like a doctor, I'm pretty sure, and this isn't what the original Thor art looks like. It's a lot more similar to, look, this actually, that helmet is part of like some 80s, 90s art. Yeah, this is a better example. So this is Eric Masterson, later known as the character Thunderstrike. But he was the original Thor, and basically back when Thor was on Asgard, Mjolnir was cast out to Midgard, Earth, and there was another enchantment on it. It was just a normal stick, like a normal walking stick. And this Eric Masterson was on a hike, finds the stick, picks it up thinking it's just a stick, and realizes he is worthy of Mjolnir somehow, and transforms physically into Thor, which is a lot stranger than the modern understanding of the character. But later on, I think Marvel realized how silly this was, and they reintroduced the character as Thunderstrike. He's got a different hammer that gives him magic powers. Not related to Thor, but he's basically another version of Thor, more or less. He's not too well known nowadays. One of the more obscure Marvel characters, that's for sure. But an interesting tidbit nonetheless. Let's see here. Back to Miles Morales was Thor. So this is in reference to what if Miles Morales was worthy of Mjolnir and became Thor. Let's find some examples. So this is the art of the character. This is the comic book. And, when I first saw this on Twitter, I saw the controversy, I really didn't see what the problem was. But I am a white guy, so I can't really speak to what makes black people and Latino and Latina peoples upset. I am by no means an authority on that, so let's just keep that in mind here. So some examples as to why he says hammer time. People found offense to that. I didn't actually read the comic myself, which I think is, I should. Just so I can give a full in-depth look at it. I definitely might one day. It's definitely on my list just from this controversy alone. But apparently this story was, I think, one of the first times, if not the first time, that a non-black writer wrote a Miles Morales comic. So that maybe explains why things went so wrong. He's got graffiti on Mjolnir as well. That, I think, is it's technically true to the character, because if you've seen Miles Morales Into the Spider-Verse, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales' character and his relationship with his Uncle Aaron is like it's surrounded by art. He's an artist. He practices graffiti. He makes little stickers in the opening. And there's that amazing scene that has like him, Uncle Aaron takes into a secret place in the subway, like an abandoned car storage thing. It's this big open area, and he makes this beautiful piece. And it's like paired with this really cool mashup of like a bunch of different like boom bap hip hop from the 80s and 90s. I saw that movie like 8 times in theaters. I still love. It is the best Spider-Man movie. So the graffiti I understand. A cool detail I also like, the Rainbow Bridge is the Brooklyn Bridge. But the Hammer timeline obviously is stupid. Also, I don't know if I like this haircut they give him. I guess the idea is to make him look more like Thor. They give him the blonde hair there, which, again, I'm not going to speak to why people are offended by this, because I don't really get it myself. Let's try to see. Yeah, here we go. Well, yeah, I don't like to brag, but that mission was straight fire, in reference to the fire horde of Muspelheim, which is like another realm. Yeah, this is the name of a rap album. All Eyes on Me. Like, this one was another big example. I want to see if I can find it, but at one point he just says Asgard is the hood. And I find that really funny. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it here. But oh no, oh, I haven't seen this. By Odin's Fade. Okay, yeah, you can't do that. Okay, I command you, shield this lost son of Freyja. Oh no. Yeah, you can't do that. All right, context. Popular Thor quote is, by Odin's beard. By Odin's Fade. Freyja is, I'm assuming, like a Ebonics Freya, which is like Queen of the Valkyries in Norse mythology. Yeah, I can see why people. Okay, I see it now. You can't do that. Yeah, all right. I didn't realize that. Maybe I can find somewhere to read it. Can I find it? Hopefully I don't have to like buy it. Oh my gosh, no. Read online. I'm internet browsing right now. Yeah. Digital issue is not currently available. So I doubt anyone's uploaded it. There might be a scan of it somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to find it probably. But yeah, you can't say that shit, man. Wow. I'm blown away. I'm hoping to find more examples. Maybe I won't. Yeah, I'm probably not gonna. By Odin's Fade. That's really bad. Here we go. Of all the 5 realms, Asgard is his hood. Oh, it's a rhyme. Look, they're rapping. Of all the 5 realms, Asgard is his hood. For miles, you can see he's just that good. The Rainbow Bridge takes him to his quest. The Bifrost line goes north, south, east, and west. Who is rapping this? From Jormungandr to the Wrecking Crew, he stuck Gullinburstel in the Asgard Zoo. Brooklyn Zoo, Asgard Zoo. Okay, I can see. But he is low-key when he wants to be. Name on Marquise, like his uncle Loki. Odinson, he's the son of gods and kings. Got so many wins. Check out all those rings. He's formerly known as a prince for sure. His subjects and friends, they just call him Thor. That doesn't even rhyme. Wow. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay. I totally get it now. Makes sense. Yeah. Well, anyway, it looks like they apologized. Yehudi Mercado. What? Is this guy non-black? Mercado? He looks... I don't know. I'm not going to try and say he looks like anything. But apparently he's not black. I think that makes sense by looking at him. Could just be white passing. I don't know. Not going to make any assumptions. Because that's the stand-up guy I am. Can I find his Wikipedia page? Does that say his race? He probably doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Yeah. Okay. The guy apologized at least. Let me see if I can actually read this IGN. I hope to use this moment to help promote better authenticity. It's calling it a comic. Caricature depictions of black people. While I've lived a different experience through my own Jewish and Mexican background, I still know inauthenticity hurts, and I'm sorry this failed on that front. I've appreciated hearing and learning from my black and Puerto Rican comics peers and hope to use this moment to help promote better authenticity. I'm also going to donate what Marvel paid me to the Brooklyn Book Bodega, which works to build literacy and get more books to kids in NYC. That's a good response, right? That's nice of him. He didn't have to do that. Of all the 5 realms, Asgard is the hood. He says it's hammer time, which is covering graffiti. This tweet here is how I heard about this story. Miles Morales says, "Urban TM Thor makes me want comics, etc., to go back to being outwardly racist." Yeah, you know, this is what I saw. I didn't really read this first panel like I did earlier. I think that's really funny though. The by Odin's fade is really, really too much. And Freja, calling one of the characters like Freja instead of Freya. Like, you know, this is supposed to be Lady Sif, who's another, in the comics she's white, but they just keep their name the same, you know. Volstagg, same thing. Well, it looks like Volstagg Asian here. He's also normally white. But, yeah. Oh well. Anyway. That's my first bit of, Ooh, I know what to talk about now. I'm sure you guys know what's been going on with Ezra Miller lately. If you're not familiar, Ezra Miller is the actor behind The Flash in the Snyder slash was it Whedon? Joss Whedon, who directed the Justice League one. Yeah. Okay. Well, here's some of the top stories. Flash movie skipping Comic-Con amid Ezra Miller allegations. Warner Bros. Cancel HBO Max series with Ezra Miller's The Flash. DCEU fans offer their solutions to save The Flash from disaster. Lucifer Star claims Ezra Miller forced WB to scrap an 8-part DC series. That's sort of unrelated. Let's see if we can get more information here. Yeah, the Flash movie in total uncertainty as Ezra Miller controversy forces it to skip Comic-Con. Yeah, I looked at this one in the last stream, I'm pretty sure. This is just like a general look at their career, excuse me. Franchise roles, yeah. I remember Ezra Miller before Flash. I liked their performance as the Flash. I definitely did. I saw them first in the movie about the Stanford prison experiment. Yeah. Stanford prison experiment movie. This thing. This is a pretty good movie. But this is where I first saw them, and they play one of the prisoners in the experiment. It's a good movie. True story. Based on true events. This guy's familiar too. I think this guy might be Ned from Ned's Declassified. Can I look at the cast? Or no, he might be the kid from Sky High. That's what I'm thinking of. Not Ty Sheridan, this loser. Yeah, this is the kid from Sky High. Yep, okay. Star-studded. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. This kid is young Neil and Scott Pilgrim. This is another Sky High alumni. I'm really getting off track. Anyway, so that's where I first saw Ezra Miller. But apparently recently, especially in Hawaii for some reason, yeah, there were some grooming allegations. Yeah, at a bar in Iceland, Miller choked a woman and threw her to the ground, which is a video that alleges to show. Well, does it allege to show it or does it show it? Appears to choke a woman in a strange video. Can I see the video? I'm probably not going to find it. Yep. Miller tells members of a North Carolina chapter of Ku Klux Klan to kill themselves with their own guns, or else we'll do it for you if that's what you want. Yeah. Who cares, man? Yeah, of course. Ku Klux Klan doesn't get any sympathy from me. I guess, is it illegal to incite violence? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that what those guys do is not legal either, and it's pretty horrible. I think people can do whatever they want to the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not going to take offense to that. The revenge film tackles sexual assault. Flash. A couple who lived with Miller at a hostel filed a restraining order against the actor. Arrested in Hawaii, charged with disorderly conduct and harassment of physical confrontation with patrons at a karaoke bar. 3 weeks after the March arrest, the actor was again taken into custody for Hawaii for allegedly throwing a chair which hit a woman at a private party, leaving the 26-year-old woman with a half-inch cut on her forehead. Music producer Oliver Ignatius and rapper Guys Guevara claimed that Miller stole the music they worked on and posted on social media without credits. Who cares? Parents of 18-year-old activist Gibson Iron Eyes, who is non-binary, accused Miller of grooming their child. In court documents obtained by TMZ from Standing Rock Sioux, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Sioux Tribal Court, Gibson parents, attorney activist Chase Iron Eyes, and pediatrician Sarah Jumping Eagle, seeking arrest for the court, alleging Miller has been involved with their child since they were 12. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's not good at all. So I think this is the big one. Miller and Gibson remain on the run. What? The court has not been able to locate or serve the actor because their whereabouts are unknown. Gibson releases a video. This is the victim. A statement on Instagram saying, "Nobody's controlling my Instagram account," and expresses support on the press coverage. It's really distressing that the narrative of the victim in question is not being granted any trust. Okay. I worked really hard to make really clear what's going on. They said in the video, the statement's too profoundly contrasting whatever assumptions, blah, blah, blah. I guess this is Gibson. This is the... Yeah, but Miller is apparently on the run from the authorities, to my knowledge. Yep. Wow. Okay. So that's that. How does this relate to comics, other than the fact that they played The Flash? In the midst of all this, DC releases a comic with this cover, and it's specifically meant to take place in the DCEU. It looks like they pulled the listing. DCEU comic book universe. So I'm getting a text message. Everything's fine. Well, I don't really have to explain what's wrong here. He's naked. They're naked. Well, no, this is the Flash. The Flash has he, him pronouns. He's naked. And a police car is about to get thrown at him. So I think that really speaks for itself. I think that's really striking imagery there. That's that. Moving on. You guys ever heard of New Warriors? It's a Marvel property. Older Marvel property. It originally no, it wasn't 2020. No, it was 2020. I have it saved somewhere. Yeah, here it is. New Warriors. So the New Warriors started in late 80s, early 90s, and the basic understanding was it's a superhero team for the then modern era, comprised of people that most haven't heard about. They were involved in a pretty significant portion of the Civil War comic book series, or comic book event rather. And you know, it's from that they're probably most well known. But basically, here we are. On my birthday, on my birthday 2 years ago. Wow, that's huge. I didn't know that. So this is the New Warriors. These guys are the old New Warriors: Night Thrasher, Firestar, Rage, Speedball, and Namorita. And these are the New Warriors. These characters stirred quite a bit of controversy. I've got it written in my notes here, actually, that Daniel Kibblesmith, who is the author of this book, his New Warriors run was dead on arrival due to controversy coming from both sides of the political spectrum. And I think we'll understand why that is in a little while. So here's, everything seems fine so far. Just a standard modern-day comic book. Here's the old Warriors, one of the new ones. Here they are. So here we go. One of them is called Screen Time. Wow. You're going to love this. A meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas. Wow. That one is definitely one of the stupidest comic book origins I've ever heard. I haven't read this. It did only release one issue because of the controversy, to my knowledge. There is an Amazon listing for it, so I believe it was sold. I don't think they continued this run, but this is just one of the characters so far. So now he can see augmented reality, real-time maps, can instantly Google any fact. Does this make him effectively a genius? He sure acts like it does. And this is a quote from Kibble Smith. I wanted to have teen characters who felt as now as the New Warriors did in 1990. The New Warriors have been zeitgeist characters from the beginning. You get edgy skateboarding Night Thrasher in the 90s, and the reality TV team in the 2000s, which was the Civil War comic book event. And now in 2020, we have New Warriors who have never grown up without the internet. One character who appears to essentially live inside of it. It's an interesting idea. There's always the guy in the chair. Think Oracle from the Batman comics, who's first Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, but after the events of the Killing Joke, when Joker shoots her in the spine, she's wheelchair bound, but still helps out the team by like hacking. There's always the hacker. It's not a bad idea for a character. The name, the idea here. Let's find the quote. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense. And I know you see these two names, but let me get to it. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense. And because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we like the idea that he has infinite screen time. Yeah. I mean, people on... let me continue before I talk about the reaction. So these are the psychic twins, Snowflake and Safe Space. Snowflake, a cryokinetic, can materialize snowflake-shaped shuriken projectiles for throwing. Safe Space can materialize pink force fields, but he can't inhabit them himself. The reflex only works if he's protecting others. They are hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, and they see their superheroics as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. They're probably streaming this. What a joke. What an embarrassment. This comes across like, if you're familiar with the Steve Buscemi bit in 30 Rock, where he's like an old private eye trying to blend in with high school kids. Let's pull it up. Let's pull it up. It's probably going to be the first one. How do you do, fellow kids? Right? Music band. How do you do, fellow kids? That's what it comes off as. No teenager talks like this. This is what a 40-year-old loser from Brooklyn thinks a teenager talks like. Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins. Their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory. They take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. So it upsets the people. These are the really most egregious examples. The rest of them are pretty milquetoast. So these are the main reasons why people were upset, right? People on the right, the argument is always leave politics out of comic books, and at the end of the day, comics, they are made for kids, but it is an art form, and with that, politics will be there. How you use politics in a comic book, this probably isn't the right way to go about it. This almost comes off like a parody, like you're making fun. Why would you name a character Snowflake? I mean, and it's such like a overused buzzword too. I know this was 2 years ago, but especially now, it's just, geez Louise. There are good ways to use politics in comic books. Like during Civil War, there's an act that's passed called the Superhero Registration Act, and basically all superheroics needs to be registered with and approved by the government, background checks, because these are beings that are capable of incredible destruction in the blink of an eye. Some of them can warp very reality. Of course, people are going to be terrified walking the streets. It's why I think the X-Men as an allegory for racism doesn't hold up. Because if you're not familiar, the X-Men are they're mutants, right? They're like the next evolution in man. They have a gene in them that is activated during puberty that gives them their superhuman abilities. And so because of this, there are more extreme opponents that say, oh, mutants should be outlawed, they should be hunted down and killed, which, a bit extreme. But, there's a genuine fear there. And it doesn't apply as a real allegory for homophobia or racism, because there isn't one gay person or black person that can shoot laser beams from their eyes. If mutants really did exist, I'd be terrified of them as well. I'd want them to be, same way I feel about like gun violence. I think guns should be outlawed. I would probably say we should outlaw mutants too, because goddamn, some of this shit is crazy. Some of the shit that mutants can do, truly insane. So I think politics can be used in comic books. I don't think that's like a line you can't cross. I think it's kind of childish. But then again, we are talking about comic books. It's not like an adult. Well, it's become that. But at the end of the day, these are characters that are on lunchboxes, right? You can tell dark, brooding stories with Batman, and I think that's pretty much the only one. Comic books should have levity. They should be lighthearted. They should tell, fun stories. Let's see here. So yeah, people on the right were upset because, boo-hoo, another black character in my comic book, or that's more extreme. I don't think that was the majority, but what is Marvel coming to? They're putting freaking this one's harmless. It's bad. Don't get me wrong, but harmless. This one is also pretty dumb, but the name isn't as dumb. Like, this person's deal is that they have that backpack is like alien tech they found, and it's essentially a bag of holding from D&D. If you're not familiar, it's like infinite space. So I don't really see how that qualifies them as a superhero. They just have it's basically like Dora the Explorer, right? So people see this lineup, right? And like the crazy internet nerds are going to say, wow, the only white guy on this team is a vampire? Come on, Marvel. That I'm not worried about. So there's that coming from that side. Like, it is so stupid to name a character Snowflake. And then people on the left, they go, okay, this is patronizing, this is tone deaf, and largely unneeded. It's not like the characters themselves are like atrociously bad designs. The vampire one is pretty stupid. And I'm not a fan of like bright neon hair like that. And they're both like really short. Also, the pose that they're in on this comic art at the top here, they're like in this embrace. They're supposed to be twin brother and sister, twin siblings rather. Except I believe one of them is non-binary. And that's not a pose that siblings should have. It looks a little bit more intimate. Anyway, that's the New Warriors debacle. I've got one more thing I think I'll talk about today, and I brought it up a little bit already. This idea that X-Men as an allegory for minorities, They're a team composed of mutants, people with innate superhuman abilities that are activated during puberty. Throughout comics, mutants are seen as a threat against mankind and are targeted in political spheres. Laws are proposed to register/detain mutants to protect the average man. One of the more famous villains, if you've seen X-Men Days of Future Past, objectively the best X-Men movie. I think his name was like Bolivar Trask, if I'm not mistaken. I think his name is literally Bolivar. I think I'm getting that wrong. Bolivar. Yeah. Peter Dinklage played him. He is a supervillain that is responsible for the Sentinels, which is some of the like most iconic X-Men imagery. They're a character in Marvel vs. Capcom. Some of the older designs. This is kind of like what have you ever seen like the cartoon in the 90s? These were like a big enemy, and basically they're robots that are designed to. I kind of like the interpretation in the movie, but I hate how all modern superhero movies have these like boring, samey designs. This one is cool. It's still a little too dark for my taste. You know, Sentinels are supposed to be these bright purple things. But the idea is that, like in the film, Trask is the head of a tech company that gets funding from the government to create the Sentinels, which they take Mystique's DNA to adapt to any mutant that they're fighting. So, like, they're fighting Iceman, they turn to lava, right? They're fighting Sunspot, which is a fire-based X-Men. They turn to ice, whatever. And Mystique, if those of you aren't familiar, that's the blue lady played by Jennifer Lawrence in the newer movies. That can like shapeshift basically, and nothing else. But yeah. Anyway, this is like one of the more popular X-Men villains. Trask. Trask is the guy behind this big robot that can kill mutants pretty easily. X-Men costumes in the movies, terrible, god awful. They're all wearing black leather suits. In later films, they take on a more uniform approach. This is like if in X-Men First Class, they all wear suits. This is like new comic stuff though. Yeah, like X-Men First Class. The original like 60s books sees the original like 5 characters, Jean Grey, Beast, Iceman, Cyclops, and Angel, all wear these like yellow and blue suits. And that's supposed to show like uniformity and being a team. But later in the 80s and 90s, they gain these more recognizable, very bright, colorful costumes that not only show their individuality. See, this is the original team lineup. It's a bit of a low-res image, but this is what the original... Oh, wow, that's a terrible one. The original costumes looked like. But later on, they get these, in my opinion, some of like peak X-Men design is from the comics. Or, sorry, this cartoon. Like they're all very distinct and very, compare it to like a pride parade, it's very flamboyant and over the top. It's not to say that there are like specifically homoerotic undertones with the X-Men in particular. I think that can be said for all of comic books. They're dudes who wear tight clothes and beat up other dudes. So, there's something there. Yeah, X-Men costumes are often flamboyant and colorful, expressions of unity within the team itself while still representing self-individuality. They're symbols. This is what, Bryan Singer gets wrong in his movies. The black leather suits, they're actually hard to move around in. Part of the, like behind the scenes of the first X-Men movie, there's a quote from James Marsden, who plays Cyclops in this film. In these suits, you couldn't feel like less of a superhero. They were so hard to move around in. Also, Bryan Singer is a renowned pedophile. It is a poor allegory, like I said before. If mutants existed, you would be terrified. But I like this idea that, it really, their costumes stick out. Like, the costumes serve a distinct purpose. These are all kind of like, this is a fan creation, but, like back in the cartoons, if I can find the same image I had. I think I passed it. Anyway, not important. Bright, flamboyant colors. Nightcrawler, he is originally a circus performer. He's a trapeze artist, so his costume should reflect that, right? Should be. I'm getting Jake Gyllenhaal Nightcrawler. Hold on. Right, it should be, very distinct, bold. But where the movies, they just have him in like a leather jacket and khakis, right? There's still like some of it. You can still kind of see the same like red V shape. But yeah. Well, folks, I think my filibuster is just about ended here. Thank you for watching. Not looking forward to editing this. This is an hour of footage, but I think we'll be okay.